Let's talk Kevin Durant. Goes to the Rockets, traded on the day of Game 7. Crazy day in the NBA, but what did you think about the deal for Houston?
I like it. It's a good, I think it's a great deal. Kevin Durant, here's what I think about it, man. And I hate this basketball analysis. I think the audience might roll their eyes a little bit here. I think on paper, this is a home run deal, because Dillon Brooks, I think, was a really important piece of the character of that team. Was he the type of guy that gets him to this point, but is actually a little bit more expendable? It's possible. I actually think that's very possible. Jalen Green, I didn't love. And to me, it's like, okay, they lose the guy I liked least in their main rotation, and they add Kevin Durant. That's an upgrade. The one thing and then they kept all of their guys, Cam Whitmore, even like guys that weren't even being able to play, Reed Shepherd. They get to keep those guys either for future moves, or those guys just move up, and now your roster is so deep. So I love the on paper fit. To me, it's a home run, and I would put them in the tier 1 of the Western Conference right now. But there is something about Kevin Durant's last few stops that just give you pause, that the teams have not become better than the sum of their parts with him. And it feels like a hot take to even point that out and suggest it could happen with Houston. But it's the only thing that gives me pause is we'll see if that team becomes something great and special, which is what Oklahoma City became, or if they became an on paper great team, in actuality, very good team.
And to your point, based on what you gave up, willing to take that risk, right? Because you're 100% right about Dillon Brooks. He's a floor raiser guy, but Memphis found this, and I think even the Rockets found this. It's at some point, there's just a level that he can't hit, and there's a degree of dependability that he just doesn't have, whether in terms of three-point shooting or fouling or whatever it might be, that feels like a swappable piece, and they swapped him. The Jalen Green thing had clearly run its course. The reason I like this trade for Houston is that, to your point, they didn't have to give up any of their things. They could still do all the stuff that they want to do. Heck, they could still trade for Devin Booker if Booker decides, you know what? And they still have all the Phoenix picks. They didn't have to give up any of the Phoenix picks back to the Suns. So that's still a possibility for them. But what I like about it is, now that Jalen Green is out, it started, I don't know about you, but it started to feel like towards the end of the year, it was a little your turn, my turn between Jalen Green and Amen Thompson. And it felt like Houston always wanted to kind of give it more to Amen Thompson, but felt like they had to give the rock to Jalen Green a lot. And there weren't a lot of games where they both were playing that well. And I've got Amen Thompson way up here in terms of like ceiling and whatever it is. Like, that guy is the future of that team, even after this trade, in my opinion. At least that's the way I think they should handle things. And now that Jalen Green is out, it just gives Amen Thompson more space. And that's, again, with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is willing to just be like, you're taking the ball? Cool. I'll be over here spacing the floor. Jalen Green never really got to that level, and that's okay. But now with him out, I think it's going to let Amen Thompson kind of grow and blossom into the player that the Rockets are hoping he can, and a lot of people think he can become. And the other great part about this for Amen Thompson and Şengün and Reed Shepherd, all the young guys on the roster, Kevin Durant, I agree with everything you said about him. He's also a pro's pro. All that cliche, first guy in, last guy out, all that stuff, he lives that, man.
Oh, he loves the game.
I remember covering him in Golden State an hour after shoot-arounds and practices, just going through his own routine, his individual stuff. If Amen Thompson, if Şengün, if Tari Eason, if these guys are going to hit their potential, getting to learn from a guy like Kevin Durant and be like, oh, that's how this is done, not to take anything away from Dillon Brooks or even Fred VanVleet or Ime, but to get that kind of example from an all-time great like Durant, that's going to speak volumes. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the best thing that ever happened to Amen Thompson's career. Maybe a little bit of like what SGA got to get when he had that year with Chris Paul in Oklahoma City. And SGA still talks about how important that was early in his career. And now Amen Thompson is getting a version of that.
Yeah, I like the take. I mean, I love Amen Thompson. I'm as high on him as just about anybody is. The other part about the Kevin Durant, the part that you didn't mention, though, is just the injuries. And I think it's hard to go through. I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about this year, and I think we could have said this for each of the last 3 or 4, is that more than ever, the NBA feels like a war of attrition. Mm-hmm. Because I think you think of like, okay, there's 16 playoff teams and 2 or 3 of them are going to have devastating injuries in the playoffs, or, something happened. It feels like almost all of them had some kind of injury in the playoffs. The Thunder really might be the only team that avoided an injury to a key guy throughout the playoffs. And I look at that and I say the odds are almost feel 50-50 about your team starting the playoffs and making it 4 rounds through without an injury. It feels 50-50. When you add a guy who's had injuries and is 37 years old, that feels worse than 50-50. And so that's just the other thing I think about. But they are deep now because they retain so many of those players that I think they're going to be able to survive a regular season with resting guys because of how many players they have.
And they can almost lose KD and not be worse than what they were last year, despite trading pieces for KD, right?
In the regular season, yes.
In the regular season, exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know. We don't see 37-year-old stars lead teams to championships, but everything's different in the NBA. I don't know what to think anymore. But
same.
You see the odds makers now, and maybe this is just initial reaction to a blockbuster trade. The odds makers have Houston as the number 2 team in the West. I like Houston better. I don't know how you don't like Houston better, at least a little bit right now, but number 2 odds in the West, that seems a little heavy for me. I wouldn't go so far as like they're way above Minnesota, who were 2 straight Western Conference Finals, way ahead of Denver. I still think the Lakers do something, and it feels like with Luka, they should be in that conversation. I don't know that they're that far ahead, but again, that might just be a betting market reaction to a blockbuster trade, just trying to drum up some bets.
I like it. I think it feels appropriate for me, but it is before free agency, the draft,
right?
Trade market. So it does feel a little like those things will change. But at the moment, I look at it and say, yes, Oklahoma City, Houston, they feel like tier 1 to me. And now it's on every other team to build out their roster to make us believe as well.